Okay, I'm back. So I think where I left off was he was in jail and I went to visit him, and the officers were pretty rude about it. So I actually just filmed the rest of this video and the computer didn't save it for some reason, so I'm having to redo it. So I hope that I'm remembering the little bits here and not leaving something out. But anyway, so I went there, and similar to the prison experience with the glass where we had the phones, it was kind of like that, except you didn't have the phones this time. It was kind of this hallway-shaped room, long, narrow, and there were several windows. And instead of the phone, there was this kind of like at the bank where there's a window to talk to the teller, and there's a little metal, almost a speaker-like thing to talk through. So you had that, and you'd sit in there and wait at the booth where you were assigned, and then they would have the prisoners come in. So he came in, and he was surprised to see me there. He sat down, and because of this room, it was concrete walls or something, it was very loud, and it was very difficult to hear. So you actually had to put your ear right up to the little speaker thing, and the other person had to scream through it just so you could barely hear each other. So that wasn't fun. The reason that I went there was to ask him about his dog, because he was living at that really awful rundown house at the time, but he had a, hey bird, he had a dog in the backyard, and she had this little dog house, so she had some shelter, but she was chained to a tree because the yard wasn't fenced and it was right by railroad tracks. She was a really sweet dog. Her name was Zoe. So I asked him what was going to happen to the dog, and I told him that I would take her and find a home for her. So I did. I showed up one day. I was a little worried that somebody might wonder what I was doing and think I would take the dog because there are a bunch of shady people living there. But nobody came out and confronted me about it. I just took her and put her in the car and got her into a shelter, and they found her a home immediately. And she had been eating not dog food really, but potato chips. That's what this poor dog ate. Vincent, no. But anyway, she's better off now. She has some other dog brothers and sisters now, and she was a really sweet girl. I hope she's doing well and happy. So while he's in prison this time around for 6 months or a year, I forget what it was, I get a phone call out of the blue, and I ended up getting several phone calls from this person. It was some woman who said that she got my phone number from her boyfriend, who was an inmate with my father at this prison. So I never called her back because I don't want to be associated with criminals. I have to be because of my father, but other than that, I don't want to be associated with these people. So I never called her back, so that's why she called me repeatedly. She was trying to get in touch with me, and she got pretty adamant. Never mean or anything, but pretty adamant about it. But I was very angry with my father that he had no regard for my privacy or well-being, because I don't know who this guy is that he's in prison with, or who this woman is. Had no regard for my privacy, that he gave out my personal cell phone number to some guy who he's in prison with to pass along to his girlfriend to get in touch with me. And it was because my father wanted me to put more money into his account in the prison. Now, when I visited him that day in jail, he had some money set aside. I don't remember what it was. He was getting payments for something or other that were deposited automatically in a bank account that he had. And he wanted me to put some of that money, and he gave me a certain amount to put into his account so we'd had money when he got to prison. So if you've seen, like, Orange is the New Black, you know, they have money for commissary and that stuff. So I did that day, and it was a big hassle. When you go downtown, you've got to park at parking meters, you've got to pay for that, you've got to keep track of the time, you've got to find the right building, because in that part of downtown there are lots of buildings that I didn't find to be very well marked, and it's pretty shady. There are lots of shady people hanging around that area because they're doing the same thing I was, you know, dealing with prisoners and such. And so I found this building, went up to this office, had to wait for a while, do this paperwork, and you know, they're government employees, so they're not very happy. They're in a terrible room and dealing with rude people and not the smartest group of people and such. So it was a really big hassle to do that. And my father kept having this woman call me because he wanted me to go put more money in his account. He told me that first amount would last him the whole time he was in there, and I had no intention of trying to help him. He was not my responsibility. He put himself in that situation. I was not going to spend any more of my time trying to help him and give him more money for whatever it was he needed in prison. So I never did that. I kept getting these calls from her, and one day he got out of prison and called me. And, let me back up a tiny bit. So the money that was being deposited into the account that day, partly in order to put money into his account, but then also for what I'm about to tell you, he had a certain amount of money in this account. And it wasn't a huge number or anything because he'd put it all up his nose. But he told me, similar to in the last video, I told you that he opened a bank account with the $10,000 he got after the divorce. He told me that he wanted to put my name on this account so that I could use any of that money that I wanted or needed for myself or my sister. And in the previous video, I told you with that account, I didn't use a penny of it. I never took anything from him. In all the years of him taking stuff from us, I never took anything from him. So I still have the piece of paper that he filled out at the jail that day that the officer signed and everything, signing the account over to me. And not only did I have that legal piece of paper, but I also had his verbal permission to do that. And I think I may have even had him write it on the back of the paper, so I have written permission. I think so. So anyway, he told me that we could use that account. So I decided, you know what, it's about time that I do use his account. And the reason, my logic behind this was he was saying that he was going to use the money to get a car when he got out of prison, but I knew better. He'd had a few cars before, and two things happened. So when he has money, he either will buy a car and wreck it, just like he did with my Fairlane. He did that with other cars too. Or he would put it up his nose. So I knew that if I left that money with him, nothing good was going to come of it. He would have nothing to show for it. So I decided, well, you know what? He's given me permission, both verbally, maybe written, and legally. I am going to use this money for me and my sister because he's taken so much from us. He owes us, and I have his permission. So I used it. And I don't remember now because this was 6 years ago or so. I don't remember what I did with it, but it was things here and there for me and my sister. It's stuff we needed. It wasn't frivolous things. I wasn't out buying Louis Vuitton bags with it. So I got a call from him one day while I was driving home from work. It was my second year teaching. I'd gone through, I'd graduated high school, I'd graduated college, I got a master's degree, and then I went through a teaching program and had started my professional career as a teacher and all this. And I got a call from him one day on my way home from work, and he's screaming at me, he's cursing because there wasn't as much money in the account as he thought there would be. Because I was spending it. And I told him, you gave us permission and all that. And he's like, yeah, but I didn't think you'd spend that much. Well, you know what? I didn't think that you would do all the things that you did to us growing up either. So, go back and watch the previous videos. So anyway, after he cursed me out and said all these things, he threatened to come up to my job because he knew where I was working. He threatened to come up to my job and get me fired. That was the last straw for me. I had worked really hard on my life to get the education that I got and to make a better life for myself than the one that I grew up in. And I was finally at a point where that was starting to happen for me. And financially, my life was starting to turn around. Other things in my life were getting better. And then he threatens to take it all away by getting me fired. And in a situation like that, I would think that it would be difficult for me to get another job as a teacher because they don't want crazy ex-cons, drug addicts showing up at school where the kids could be in danger. And the kids would never have been in danger. They my father's not a violent person, and he would never do anything like that. So, and I didn't think he'd actually show up to threaten my job either, but I wasn't going to take that chance. So that was the point where I cut him out of my life, and that was the last time I've spoken to him, and that was about 5 or 6 years ago or so. He had so many chances throughout 15 years or so to get better. He had legal chances, like being forced to go to rehab, but he also had lots of chances from us over and over and over and over and over again. And I always felt bad for him partly because when I was younger, he and I were really close. We had a really good relationship before all the cocaine business started. And I was like a daddy's girl. My mom was the disciplinarian. My sister, on the other hand, is 7 years younger than me. And her memories, I don't think she has memories of him before all the bad stuff was happening. So that's one of the reasons I think it was probably easier for her to cut him out of her life sooner. But for me, it was hard. It made me feel guilty because I think my mom too, we knew who he was before then. We knew that this other person was there. But I think we finally both realized that he was gone and not coming back. Let's see. I remember one time, and this seems kind of out of place now, but one time he said something to me about not going to the police or CPS because I would cause trouble and I was too young to know the consequences of what I was doing. If you are a kid watching this, and you're an addict or somebody in your life is telling you that, that's not true. Talk to the police, talk to CPS, talk to an adult, a teacher, whoever. Now, let me tell you this, though, if you are a kid watching, that just so you're aware, teachers and therapists, counselors, they are, if a kid comes to them or they have an idea that a child is living in an abusive home, they are required to call CPS and make a report with CPS. So I just want you to know that. Don't let that stop you. When CPS gets involved, it doesn't mean that you're going to be taken from your family immediately. It means that they assign a caseworker and they come and sort of investigate and see what the home life is like, and they talk to your parents and stuff. So if you feel like you are in danger, especially if it's physical or sexual abuse or something, absolutely talk to an adult, and hopefully someone can get you out of that situation, because you should not be going through that. If it's a situation more like mine, hopefully you have somebody that you can talk to. If it's friends or somebody at school, teachers, adults, a school counselor or something, you really should talk to somebody about it instead of just dealing with it with yourself, because it doesn't mean that you're just going to be pulled from home. Don't let anybody make you think that that's the case, because it's not. So anyway, back to what I was saying. I felt bad for him. It took me a long time to cut him out of my life. There were times when he talked to me and showed remorse about what he'd done, and was very honest and admitted to things and cried in front of me. And he was not somebody who cried. I saw him cry maybe twice growing up. So that was kind of a big deal. But after he threatened to get me fired and basically take away the life that I had built for myself, that was the last straw. So I have 2 more things to talk to you about. One of the effects of all this on me. So if you're going through this is some of the stuff that, or if your kids are going through it, some of the stuff that can happen. And then I want to end with where my family is now. So the effects of this on me, when I was growing up and we had so little money, and $5 was a big deal, I found that I came to resent people who did have money, even if they weren't wealthy or anything. But I remember specifically driving down this street we have in Houston called Kirby, And part of Kirby goes through a neighborhood called River Oaks. Now, River Oaks is a very, very wealthy neighborhood. There are these big mansions that line Kirby, like huge big mansions, okay? And I remember driving down that street on more than one occasion and just bursting into tears back when all this stuff was going on, because I resented the people who lived in those homes who had so much when we had so little. And it also affected, and I'm over that now, I don't feel that way anymore, but I wanted so badly for someone to come rescue us, because I was a good kid and I didn't deserve this. And yeah, but you know, what could those people do? They didn't know about anything that was going on, and I didn't know what resources I could contact to get help. All of that, growing up poor and dealing with money like that, it really affected how I see money in a lot of different ways, and I'll talk about a few of them. So I've always been like a big bargain hunter, even today, even with the Louis Vuitton stuff that my channel is really about. You'll notice most of my pieces are pre-loved, and that's because I'm able to get deals on them. But I had a really hard time until just the last couple years spending money on anything that wasn't a necessity. It was hard to justify spending money on something unless I absolutely needed it. And if whatever it was that I decided to spend money on it, I had to get the cheapest thing I could find. Now that has changed, obviously, if you watch my channel. I've been able to allow myself to buy things that are certainly not necessities, but things that just make me happy. It also has affected relationships that I've been in. So the first relationship I was in, which started during the time that all of this was still going on, that relationship in a lot of ways mirrored my parents' relationship. And that person and I are still friends, and he may watch this video, and some people that we both know may watch the video, so I'm not going to go into details about that relationship, but there was no physical or sexual abuse, but there was emotional abuse for sure, and I was used to that because of how I grew up, so I knew it was wrong. I knew that I was being hurt really bad by it, but I put up with it because it was the same sort of thing with my father. I knew that this guy, that the bad stuff wasn't all of who he was, and he was a good person otherwise, and I wanted to be able to look past that. That did not end well. The whole relationship was not a good thing, and that I'm sure had a lot to do with the situation growing up and seeing the relationship between my parents. So this has also affected me as a teacher. So I think it makes me a better teacher and a more empathetic teacher to my students. I remember when my mom and sister were in Girl Scouts, and my mom would tell some of the other adults at the Girl Scout camp that no matter what the kids there were doing or what they might be saying, if they were being mean or rude or something, to always be nice to the kids and be empathetic, because you don't know what they were going through at home. I don't know about my sister, but I never told anybody what was happening at home. And I was thinking about this yesterday, like even my best friends didn't know what was going on. And now it's not a secret at all. It's something I'm completely open about. But I was thinking yesterday about why I didn't tell anybody. And I think it's because there was no physical or sexual abuse that I know would have crossed a line, and I'd like to think that I would have told somebody if that was going on. But because this was emotional abuse, I didn't recognize it as abuse. It was just bad behavior that was hurting us a lot, but I didn't realize that was abuse, so I didn't tell anybody. I think that's probably what it was. One thing I want to say, and I think I said this earlier, but if you are an adult watching this that has kids going through this situation, make sure that your kids have some kind of refuge where they can escape mentally and emotionally from the home environment or whatever environment it is that's negative. That's really important to be able to have some kind of escape. This has also affected social media. So On YouTube and on Instagram, both of those accounts of mine are related to luxury goods, and I'm careful just for privacy reasons, like not to reveal where I live or anything. But my Facebook account is my personal account, and that I only accept people who I know in person. And I'm even careful there. Like, a lot of the people there know where I live, but I never post anything that would give clues about where I live. And that's all because I don't want my father to find me. Vincent thinks that's funny. So I don't even have members of his side of the family as friends. I have had them in the past, but I have unfriended them. And that's because I don't want them to accidentally or purposefully give him any clues about where I live. I don't want him to do what he did to my mother when I was in New York, where he called us and said, "Oh, I'm at your house petting your dog while you're out of town." I do not want him finding where I live and putting any part of my life now at risk. So I'm going to wrap it up here with where are we now? My mother, she has a professional job now. She's doing well. She's not wealthy or anything, but she's a lot better off than she's ever been. She has the little house that she bought after the divorce. She has her dogs. She has a group of really good girlfriends that she's able to talk to and confide in, and they travel and hang out all the time. So she's got a good life. My sister, because of everything we went through, and again, she didn't remember my father before all this stuff happened, she always had real serious anger issues. She has gotten over them through a lot of work of her own. And she and her husband have moved out of Houston. They're living in another city now. My sister taught herself to be a baker. She, for a while, was a wedding planner, and I did some wedding photography, and we did a few weddings together. And she decided that of all the things that she was doing as a wedding planner, she liked the cakes the most. And she is a self-taught baker and cake decorator. This is one of the cakes that she made. Isn't that gorgeous? So now in the city where she lives, she's working at, I think it's their most prominent bakery, and she creates beautiful things with them. And what else here? And then me, I'm an art teacher. I'm about to go into my 7th year teaching art. I've been able to travel some. I have my dogs and my bird who you've heard. And I wanted to tie this at the end here back with my regular channel about luxury goods. I think that growing up the way I did it contributes a lot and affects why I like nice things so much, because I never had them. And I never had a nice place to live that was clean and uncluttered and decorated, and everything worked together. So I think that's why I'm so particular now about how my home looks, and it's why I like nice things so much. But liking those nice things, I still look for bargains. I hardly ever pay full price for anything. And I also know the real value of them, which is nothing. Those are not the important things in life. They're nice to have, and if I can have them, I do now, and I allow myself to have these luxuries, to treat myself to luxuries. But and I also think I'm very generous. I give a lot to other people too. But I want to stress that I know those aren't the important things in life. One of the things that I'm really happy about that got to happen last year, something that is one of the important things in life, is that my mother, my sister, and I got to go on a vacation together. And let me preface this by saying, when I turned 30, my mother took me on a surprise trip to Fredericksburg, which is the Texas wine country. And we had a nice little weekend there. And you'll remember from the very first video, we never went on vacations or anything. So this was post my dad, post-divorce and everything. So this was a really fun, cool, first time we ever did anything like that kind of thing. Now we go to wineries all the time. When my sister turned 30, my mom took her on a surprise trip. They went to Florida, and they're both beach people, so that worked for them. So last October, my mom turned 60, so it was my sister's idea. She said, hey, why don't we take mother on a surprise trip. So we were able to get together, and the three of us went to California, and we had never been out there. My mom went when she was a little kid. She went to Disney World and had that charm bracelet I mentioned in the first video. But we went to California. We spent the first night on the coast, which was so gorgeous. Oh my God. We spent the second day in Sonoma doing wineries, and we spent the third day in Napa doing wineries, and we also got to do a hot air balloon ride that morning, which is very cool, and we got to blend our own wine at this place and bottle it and all that. But that trip was really important because we realized it was the first time that the three of us had ever taken a real vacation, and it was, for us, it was a lavish, luxurious vacation, even though it was just like 3 days. And it was meaningful because it was like, we've made it. We've finally are past all that stuff in our life, and we're all in really good places now, and we're doing well, and this is the celebration of that. So that was a really great trip, and I'm so glad that we got to do it. It's wonderful. So I think that's where I can end. And if you've made it through all these, thank you so much for watching. Please like the video if you like it. And if you'd like to see more of my luxury stuff, click subscribe, because that's what my channel is really about. Also, if you have any questions or comments you want to leave below, I don't plan to do more videos on this topic, but if I get enough questions or something, I'm happy to do a Q&A video. But otherwise, it's about the luxury goods, and particularly Louis Vuitton. That's my brand. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye. Have a great day.